Right, good evening. You're watching live with Faye on YouTube. Thank you for joining us. Just want to remind our viewers to please tell friends and family to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We are at 142,000 followers, and we'd love to see that go up to 150,000 followers. So that's just a milestone that I've been looking forward to. So if there's anyone you know who enjoys the kind of content that we're putting out and the news and the analysis, please let them know, especially senior citizens. Sometimes you have to actually do it for them. So there's a subscribe button on the YouTube channel. It's completely free. If you click that subscribe button, you will get a notification whenever we upload a video, whenever we go live, and you'll be able to watch it. Specifically, do it on smart TVs as well, so that you don't have to watch it on your phone, which I know can be a little cumbersome. So inform other people that they can do this also, and they can subscribe to this channel. Now, we know the Bihar election is around the corner, and obviously there's going to be a lot of conversation about, who's contesting, and whether Nitish Kumar can hang on to his gaddi, and whether the BJP Nitish Kumar, alliance is going to actually weather the storm of this election. Chirag Paswan, what sort of card is he going to play, and is he going to split the votes of Nitish Kumar? Now, we will get to that, and that's the normal political analysis which you're going to get. But I want to just draw your attention to something else today. When we put out on Twitter that we are actually going to take a look at representation of women in the Bihar elections, which I must tell you, my team and I have been doing continuously for elections over the last 3 or 4 years. There was one individual who responded saying, I don't know why you pick such irrelevant topics. Either you're just short of topics, or you don't know how politics is played in Bihar. Well, we don't know how politics is played in Bihar, but we're bringing this up because someone should. And this is how change actually starts, when we become aware of what is going wrong, and we try then to fix it. Now, my job is to spark conversation, and that's what we're doing this evening. We're going to talk about how many tickets are handed to women candidates and why this is important. Now, you know that across Parliament and most state assemblies, the average representation of women is about 11%. Higher than what it has been in the past, but still abysmal, given the fact that women are half of the population in society. It should be closer to 50%, but what we have is 11%, and what we have is politicians who will tell us that we should be happy with the 11%. Let me just put up on the screen what Bihar's tickets look like this time from various parties. And my colleague Ira is going to just share that on the screen. And this is, there it is. This is thanks to the Via and India Spend who put this up. I beg your pardon. India Spend who collated this information. You'll see the RJD has given tickets to 17 women out of a total of 144 tickets. That's a little over 11%. The LJP has given 12 women tickets out of a total of 16. JDU has given tickets to 20 women out of a total of 115. That's 18%. The BJP, staying to its national average, actually, handed over 13 tickets out of a total of 110 to women. So that's a little over 11%. The Congress at 10%, less than the BJP and the left parties there at altogether at 3.4%. Now, these numbers are better than they were in the previous assembly elections, where the average was about 9%. But it's still, like I said, not good enough. Now, why are we bringing this up? I just want to take you through the problems that Bihar is facing right now. Among all of the states in our country, Bihar actually ranks the lowest on the Human Development Index. There is a much higher prevalence of hungry children in Bihar, which is basically stunting of children below the age of 5, 48.3% in Bihar, the worst across the country, 10% higher than the national average. According to the World Health Organization, infant mortality, which is when babies die, is sharply higher for girls in Bihar than it is for boys in Bihar, although the total number is quite bad as well. Now, other than that, compared to the other states, Bihar ranks very low on life expectancy at birth, on the number of government doctors available for the total population, on infant mortality, like I told you, on maternal mortality, so antenatal, postnatal mortality, so mothers who actually pass away when giving birth, on poverty in general, per capita GDP, enrollment in higher education, and toilets available for girl students. Now, these are problems that we can say are endemic to the country of India, but many states have managed to actually solve these problems or improve their data on these problems. Bihar lagging behind. And you will say, oh, does that mean if you vote in women, it will solve the problem? And I'll ask that question. That's a fair question. We'll ask that question through the conversation. I just feel that since we're looking at a state with so many social problems, will there be a better, turnout in terms of the numbers and improvement if there are more women in decision-making rooms? And to answer that question, and we're talking about why we don't have stronger representation for women, we also talk about the idea of winnability. A lot of politicians have argued to me in the past that women don't win elections, men win elections. And we'll talk about that as well. And we'll take your questions. Joining me this evening, Ranjana Kumari, who is a voice, a very strong voice when it comes to matters affecting women. We also have Ranjana Das, who's the manager at Oxfam India. So two Miss Ranjanas on the conversation. And Krishnaswamy, who's the co-founder of Political Shakti. Now, this is a brilliant organization that has been working for many years with the singular attempt to include more women in politics. Ladies, thank you so much for joining us. I'm very proud to have an all-women's panel. It always makes me happy. Thank you to our audience who've tuned in as well. Tara, Krishnaswamy, I come to you first because this is your campaign. Have you had, and I know that you've been having conversations from within your organization with various political parties, what responses have you got so far to your question of why there aren't more women being given tickets?
I mean, first of all, the percentage of tickets from JDU has doubled since last time. While it is nowhere near 50%, we must recognize that that is a huge leap forward. If every party gave about 20% tickets, we would easily have 50 women out of 243, at least a quarter full of women in the Vidhan Sabha, which is, closer to critical mass than we have today. So that's great. Yes. Women also have a great hit rate despite what political parties would like to sort of propagate as a myth. Last time, 10 out of 10 RJD candidates, women won. 9 out of 10 JDU women won. 4 out of 5 Congress women won. And even with the BJP, they had a 26% hit rate, which is, pretty good compared to, men. So when we talk to parties, oftentimes they, either say that there are not enough interested women, show us the women. Even today, one of the parties said, we want more women, show us the women. But that doesn't sit well with their sort of chest-thumping claims around, we have so many lakhs of women in our women's wing in our political party. When it comes to claiming how women-friendly they are, they like to wave that we have lakhs of women in our party card. They also like to front-end their door-to-door campaigns with a posse of women because they themselves know that if a posse of men go, nobody will open the door. So to get the door-to-door campaign and get the vote out, right? Get out the vote part of the campaign, they need a posse of women front-ending this, right? So they use women as sort of vote-catching nets, but they refuse to give tickets to women. Many times they use them as proxies, and sometimes, they will actually use them as spokespeople or sort of non-threatening roles where they don't build a political base. But the ostensible claim is that are women winnable, right? That's the claim they keep making, despite the data to the contrary. In fact, if you go to the Election Commission website, Faye, you will see that for every election since 1952, every single Lok Sabha election since 1952, and I mean every single Lok Sabha election, that women have won at a greater rate than men. It is the most shocking sort of fallacy that we've propagated and made ourselves believe in this country, that women are not winnable. Voters love women. That's what it means.
Right. So I have to ask you this question because I know that everybody's going to be thinking it. Is there evidence to suggest or do you believe that if we have more women in Parliament and Assembly, that we will have better results on the ground in terms of work done? Or do you believe that simply in interest of representation, which is what Parliament and Assembly ought to be, it is representative of society, simply in interest of representation, we need to have more women in Parliament and in Assembly?
Yes, yes, and yes. Of course, we're a representative democracy. We, just by virtue of existence, we have the right to stand for elections and we have the right to represent ourselves, and we must. Not to mention that our lived experiences are significantly different than those of men's. Now, women, we ourselves are a varied lot. There isn't a single woman representative of the class of women in India. We have women who are varied by class and caste and professions and states, and the diversity in India is just mind-boggling. The diversity within women is mind-boggling. So when I say women, I mean women of all varied sections of society and those who identify as women as well. But the point is that no matter what class, what caste, what profession, which state you're from, women as a gender are sort of have completely different lived experiences than men do. At 20, someone's pressuring you to get married. At 25, people are pressuring you to have babies. People decide whether you can work. You don't have agency over your body. Every day when you go out, you're clutching your purse because you know someone's going to grope you. So your lived experience, you don't choose a college far away because your parents won't send you. It's not like you aspire to be and fight in the front lines of the army. So our lived experiences, we better come to terms with it, are different than men's experiences. And when it comes to law and policy making, why would GST introduce a 16% tax on sanitary napkins at the get-go if there was a critical mass of women in Parliament? Okay, so they learned it the hard way and fixed it after a couple of years. But when they imposed the lockdown, sanitary napkins were not on the list of essential commodities for a whole period of time until they fixed it again. Again, the lack of women's influence. So it is because we are a representative democracy. It is also because the laws and policies shaping the destiny of India must have the voices of half the talent whose lived experiences are significantly different.
Yes.
And also because of the other thing that you said, which is just like when you open your schools, when you open your corporates and let in the women, the nature of work, the nature of education changes. Just the sheer presence of a critical mass of women. Again, it's not a woman here and a woman there and 10% women and 11% women. A critical mass of women will transform politics in India for the better. No doubt about it. Simply because of a varied set of experiences and inputs coming in, better laws and better policies will be found.
Well, actually, really eloquently said. And I just want to point out that in Bihar, all of the things that Tara just pointed out, going to school, going to college, the age at which one is forced to be married, the age at which one is forced to have babies is actually far more stark in Bihar than it is in the rest of India. Bringing this to our other guests, Ms. Ranjana Kumari, and I have to specify, I remember watching on TV when the Women's Reservation Bill was passed in one House of Parliament, and I was, I teared up a little bit because it meant so much to me. And then we know what happened to that Women's Reservation Bill. It wound up in the dustbin and it never saw the light of day. One would also argue, specifically to do with Bihar, that let's say if we include women, they'll just become proxies for their husband, because Bihar is a state in which that happened, where Lalu Yadav couldn't contest and couldn't be chief minister. So his wife became chief minister. And, how much of her part did her life experience or her lived experience play in that case? Where do you stand on this particular matter of women's representation? And how long do you think the road is in front of us?
Well, I think we were in the gallery of the parliament when the bill was passed. And this whole issue of representation is going on for 28, 29 years now. And the Women Reservation Bill is pending. But, let's go to Bihar and talk about Bihar politics. And since I'm quite familiar and I'm closer to that part of the region, country. So I think it's important to understand that Bihar politics has always been, politics of caste, politics of family, politics of, so it's always been the politics which is controlled and played by, but when it comes to women, I think Bihar showed a lot of more willingness to share power with women at the panchayat level. So Nitish Kumar's government passed the 50% reservation for women in Panchayati Raj. That was the first state to give it. And the result came out successive elections when women, the Shiksha, Sadak and the Swasthya Suvidha, all those things really panned out to get more and more involvement of women in electing Nitish Kumar back. And every time women voted more than men in Bihar. So women became politically active, aspirational at the local level. But when you come to the state level, state assembly, the political party's willingness or lack of political will is what really comes in the way. Because when the party, look at I just want to give you a very good example of left parties. They stood by the commitment of giving representation to women from day one. But when you look at the party hierarchy and party structure, except for one woman who reached the Politburo somehow in recent times, they never encouraged, they never built a pipeline of women who are actively engaged in political discourse within the party organization, as well as supporting women who are working at the grassroots or at any level. At least the women who became mayor certainly can become a candidate for contesting for state assembly, but that's where the disconnect started happening. And of course, the current election, you will see a lot of family women, a lot of political family women who have jumped into the fray. In any case, it is a boys' club. Papa's munnas are all leading the election campaign. So I don't mind if munnis are also being given and the wives and the daughters and all get some space there. It's okay. I mean, that's not the quarrel. The problem is that if there are no political pipeline of women leadership, if there is no special space given to women, or not special, normal space given to women within the political party, and also to top it all, women who work for years and years and years for party are not recognized and not given the ticket. So what happens at the end of the whole thing is that family starts getting very discouraged by this, and they tell their women, why are you there, why are you wasting your time, all kinds. And then in Bihar is very, very easy to start politically maligning women. And that has happened a lot in Bihar. The character assassination, that so-and-so is to lose character, this, that. Anyway, we all know that.
Yeah.
Now, I want to establish a direct link.
One second, and I'm just going to read out a question from Aman Peshawari, who's also supported us with 8,000 rupees. Thank you, Aman. I appreciate that. He says, I agree that women are winnable, but is an important thing, but the level of misogyny that exists during campaigns is also something that should not be tolerated. Azam Khan, as an MP, despite his comments, is still an MP despite his comments on Jayaprada. Tejasvi Surya, the president of the BJP Yuva Morcha, has made comments about women. The lack of action is a problem as well. And I just want to point out, we've had Kamal Nath say something really uncool. He called a woman an item. Then we had somebody else talk about, call somebody else a Rakhel. I mean, this sort of thing happens. You and I have had so many conversations about it. It's just, why do we put up with this?
Yes, I think it's important to, we have to become really strong and, thick skin to ignore all this. But as a social statement, you cannot ignore it. As a political statement, you cannot ignore it, because this is what then creates the kind of, image for a woman politician. If the women sitting in parliament are not spared, if women sitting in state assemblies are not spared, who really have to, struggle so hard to reach where they are. So I think this is the culture, political culture, that we have created, where we have tried to isolate women and try to instill fear in them. And also, so both sides, there is no political willingness to share the power. And that is why women reservation bill is pending, or that is why Bihar Assembly could not pass a resolution saying that let's give 33% to women. And on the other side, you create conditions. Like, just like what is happening in rape cases. You create conditions where you will be told, don't go out in the night, don't do this, don't. So all the don'ts are being really underlined and, within the court given to the women, saying that, don't do all this, politics is not your field and all. So blaming women for not really coming forward and not being able to get and also the fact that the winnability is very high for women is known for a long time now. This is not the first time that we are discovering that there is a high winnability for women. There was a committee set up by National Commission for Women long back when, even I was asked to contest for parliament. I think that is the time when we really studied the whole process, and we knew that women are winning more than men winning. So winnability is just an excuse. And also within the political party, you can accept a woman as a leader. But when it comes to camaraderie and it comes to, even the left parties have not encouraged, even the, anybody. I mean, look at anybody, everybody at the top of the voice, they shout. When it comes to really doing it, then so what should be done? I think that's the whole issue at the moment. The 18% I'm very happy with, and double the number and all that stuff. But then, we have to understand that given the circumstances.
Let me just ask Ranjana asked this question. She's manager at Oxfam India. This voice is important, viewers, because Oxfam has been doing a lot of research on the ground about India's social statistics and how fast we've been growing in terms of poverty, in terms of child malnourishment, healthcare, education, that sort of thing. Ranjana Das, thank you so much for joining us and waiting so patiently and listening to the other panelists. Obviously, we have a problem, but if we step back right now and look at the rest of the world, we're also watching America, the US in its own election, where the president is saying things like she is a nasty woman, where Kamala Harris is being, there are things being said. We saw it happen in that previous election against Hillary Clinton. It's happening now as well. AOC, who is a member of Congress, was actually sworn at by a colleague on the House floor. Is this our lot globally? Can we hope for a difference?
Yeah, Faye, thanks. And first of all, thanks for creating an all-women panel. It's not only a lot, Faye. I would say there needs to be a pushback now. It's been getting too much. And for Bihar, from my experience, and I would completely agree with Ranjana over here, that a women coming into politics, there is a lot of not only character assassination, a lot of malignment, even in the terms of the work she wants to do. I have worked very closely with few corporators, women in the Patna Municipality Corporation. My conversation with them is, even if they want to take certain leadership, certain developmental programs, the kind of pushbacks that they get, the kind of non-support that they receive, not only from their counterparts, but also from the community, that's getting too much now. And that's where we need to really now make a pushback, not only through our representation, but also pushing for the work and also bringing women's agenda to the center of it. So to the question of women's representation, I would say it's, let's not stop only in giving representation in terms of numbers, but let's also bring in women's issues to the center stage. That's where when we need to work. And to some of the statistics, Faye, that you began with, I would say let's look into those statistics through a gender lens also. If you see Bihar's literacy rate right now, it has gone up, but women are still lagging behind. Women are not making it, girls are not making it beyond middle school. And that's the age where girls are getting married. Now, those are the kind of social norms which are entrenched into patriarchy, which are pushing back girls and women also. So that's where we need to now bring in women's issues at the center stage of politics, along with the representation. That would be my take on this. Yeah.
Do you also, Ranjana Das, from the Oxfam research that you've been looking at, is there evidence to suggest that having more women in decision-making positions will improve our chances against poverty and other issues that we're facing?
Yes, it does. I mean, we have worked with, you see, Bihar is a state which also faces migration. It's a state which also faces disaster. Now, in the event of migration, if you see, half the economy, the agrarian economy, is left to the women. And we have seen women taking leadership on agriculture, on running households, on running the economy also. So if they can do that, they can also represent in politics and take very good decisions. I have worked very closely with panchayat leaders, and where Bihar really has taken a leadership in giving 50% representation of women in panchayat, I have seen them doing wonders in their own panchayat. I have worked with ward members who are women. Fantastic work. So yes, of course, yes, they can. But the problem is we don't, the male counterparts don't want to give them space. They have to be given the space. And that's where our fight is.
I want to ask Tara Krishnaswamy this question. We have some questions coming in. Bindu T says, are there enough women on the party cadre level? I believe you answered that question and you did say yes. The problem is, should Ujjwala M says, should India learn something from Bangladesh? I want to ask you a question. Have we noticed that most of the women who do get tickets and who do get voted in do so because they come from political families? is it possible for women who are not from political families to find a way into politics? Because roughly look at the yardstick that we're looking at. Other than, let's say, Mahua Moitra, for example, in the TMC, most of the women in the, or a Smriti Irani, who doesn't come from a political family. We've seen the Gandhis, we've seen, Gopinath Munde's daughter has come in. A lot of the women who come in from political families. Is that the only way in for women?
So a couple of things, Faye, and I'd also like to make a quick comment on your earlier question about being maligned in the political and electoral space, and then move into this. Two examples. One is a female leader from one of the major national parties in Bihar said that when they raise these sexual harassment issues within the assembly, right, or the legislative council or the parliament, sometimes they get laughed at, right? So the reason it is important to note this is because if you're in a class of 100 guys and you're 10 women, your ability to raise women's issues is very, very low compared to if you were half full of women, right? They actually get laughed at by legislators, right? They're like, this boys will be boys kind of attitude. And the second is a very strong woman MLA, not from Bihar, told me that it's very difficult for a woman to speak to the agencies and get work done, your water board, your electricity board, because when you pick up the phone and call them, they don't take you seriously. You have to yell, you have to raise your voice, you have to shout and be extra assertive for them to listen to you. And this is, I say Ranjana Das has had similar experiences as well. We have experiences with female corporators here as well. That is the same problem. Now, to go to, and about the agrarian economy, the wage gap, right, between men and women in Bihar, because the men migrate, it is such an out-migration state. If you equalize the wage gap, the GDP of the state will go up, consumption will go up, spend will go up, right? But nobody looks at it through a gender lens, even though we are 50% of the population. So back to what you were asking about, not coming from political families and making it. There is a 4-time MLA in Bihar. I'm not advocating, I'm just giving you an example from BJP called Bhagirathi Devi. She was a sweeper. She comes from a scheduled caste. She was a sweeper, given a ticket 20 years ago. She won and won again and won again and won again. And this is the 5th time she's contesting. Okay. So, and she is not a singular example. There are women like that. Now, I would echo what Ranjana Kumari ma'am said, which is that when you look at the roster of winning MLAs and MPs, and not just in Bihar, you will see sons, nephews, brother-in-laws, father-in-laws, the sambandhis of, various families that contest and win, get tickets in opposition parties because they're political families and win. The reason that we keep asking this question for women, I think, is a disservice to women because we stick out. It's easy to say, oh, she's a wife. It's very difficult to say, oh, he's a nephew, unless you've done your research. That's the way media reports it as well. Wife of XYZ got a ticket, but the nephew did too, and the brother-in-law did too. And if you look at the national executive of the BJP, everybody from Mr. Piyush Goyal to Mr. Dharmendra Pradhan to, everybody is Prakash Javadekar, everybody is a dynast. Nobody talks about it. It's as if only women are dynasts. That's not true.
That's very well. That's actually very well said, Ranjana ji. There are many questions coming in from our viewers right now. One of them has said that we've seen how women running countries have done better with COVID than countries run by men. I just want to point out here, for anyone who's asking, when we say women, we're talking about even people who identify as women. We're talking about trans women. We're talking about representation. So that's not, it's not a hard line there. But I want to understand from the panel right now, what do we do? I don't want to have this conversation. As much as I enjoy talking to all three of you, I don't want to have this conversation again, 6-7 years down the line. What can we do to change it?
Well, I think we have some processes started already in India. And as you rightly said that, when you look at Jacinda Ardern or you look at, Angela Merkel or whatever, all these big leaders have managed their countries better during COVID. And also that in their country, we didn't see COVID affecting women more. Do you know our women have died more during COVID than men in India? 3.3% women have died, whereas 2.7% men have died. I mean, death is nothing to talk about or celebrate. But look, this is what is the situation, and also violence has increased. So many things have gone wrong. They lost jobs. So we have not really looked at even this pandemic with gender lens, because women in the policy making are missing. Our Niti Aayog, look at the top to bottom, everywhere it is these people who really, I mean, I'm not saying men are not competent, or maybe but they're not looking at from gender lens, and that is why there is no decision about it. Now, when I'm saying the process has started, let me just tell you, I mean, for example, Odisha is an example. And in fact, we have congratulated Naveen Patnaik ji for that a lot, because he did managed to keep his promise of giving 33% seats to women. And his women won those seats, including a woman, just like in Bihar, the example Tara gave, is someone who was just leading a self-help group. And she is today sitting in the India's parliament. Now, same as I think I just recently heard in Punjab that 33% higher level jobs will be reserved for women. So maybe next step will be then, okay, fine, then why not the state assembly? So even states can start that. You don't have to wait for the national discourse to come. So Bihar could have done that. That's what I'm saying, that when Nitish Kumar thought of 50% to women in Panchayat, he could have brought this bill in his state legislature and given 33% to women. But then the other very important factor is that when it comes to women contesting against men and winning the election, then they don't have the muscle, the money, all that. And that is why independently women cannot come in. And that is why we are from the very beginning, in spite of the fact that some women's groups also were not supporting our idea of giving space to women by reserving the seats. And unless that is done, that is the way out. And that there is no discussion about it in the current government. In the previous 6 years, we haven't heard a single word about giving women representation. So, in some sense, unless this political class and this kind of political people will wake up to the call, and women are giving bigger push to get this whole agenda, we both sides, we can't also keep silent. Women cannot think about politics is not our business. Politics is not something for us. It is our business, because it is a direct link between the political decision making and social outcomes. And that's what you see in Bihar. Because of the political decision making, you do see that, hunger project, the report that came out, clearly, if you take out Bihar and UP and Madhya Pradesh, we are somewhere very high up. But then, these states don't wake up to all this. And you talk about female, women dying during childbirth, that is reproductive rights for that matter. Then the young children. So there is a direct link. How much money are you investing in all this? If you are not investing the money, your legislature is not worried about it. As men sitting in the legislature, this will be the last thing. Why only menstruation? About everything to do with women.
Ranjana, Kumari, this is slightly off the topic, but we had conversations during the lockdown of how, when the lockdown happened, most of the government services that are meant to go to women were actually suspended altogether. The distribution of contraceptives, for example, prenatal, antenatal checkups and care and vitamins that are given to pregnant women, any sort of services, health services that the government gives women was suspended. Now, this is obviously because the government doesn't, I don't want to believe it's because the government doesn't care about women. I believe it's because there were no women in the room when these decisions were being made who said, hang on, we need to do this. And as a result, it got overlooked. Is that the problem that we're trying to solve for?
Absolutely, that's the problem. That, if women were sitting and somebody had that gender lens on, would never ever suspend the services. Women went pillar to post to even during childbirth. There were no hospital beds available. There was no precaution taken about so many pregnant women who will go for the delivery during this period. Even now, I'm not saying pandemic is over. Pandemic is on, and who knows when it will be over. But then what is the arrangement? What kind of a decision has this government taken? Not even a single statement you must have heard from any politician worth significance about what's happening to women during this period. And then so many women losing job as if it's very normal, because women's income is considered as pocket money. It's not true, because a lot of women are managing their own homes with their own income. And if women are not sitting there, who's going to talk about all this? So, naturally it comes as a gender. When you look at the parliamentary debate, for example, when you look at the women's issues being discussed, you will see women parliamentarians discussing it or raising it or talking about it. And there is a direct evidence then that, look, when it comes to women's issues, if women are more there, women are getting elected there, and women will have voices in policy making, there'll be better policies for women. So there's a direct link.
Well, we have one more question from Aman Peshawari, who says, a friend said that Smriti Irani has done a disservice to women by keeping mum on the Hathras rape case, despite being the Women and Child Development Minister of the country. We should call that out as well. Do you believe, I mean, how do you see that? Do you see that as a failure of representation, or do you think that all men and women in parliament failed on that account?
Well, when you have you are asking me, Faye, this question? Okay.
Yes.
When you have very few women, and women's political future or political life depends on decision made by men who are controlling these political parties. Because as I told you, women are not there in political party structures. Very few women are members of the political party. I think when they say lacks of women, it's all lies, because when it comes to political membership, very few women are members of political parties. So when it comes to such women like Smriti Irani or many others, I mean, even earlier, I won't say just even during the period when we were fighting for Nirbhaya, women parliamentarians did not say anything for first few days. So because they are not having the independent voice. And a lot of them are in ornamental presence. I'm sorry. I mean, like when I'm making this statement, perhaps a lot of people will get upset with me. But, this ornamental presence is because you want to keep silence, or you've been asked to be silent. And you have to be silent. Because if you will not, then it's very easy to cut you off. It's very easy to throw you out. Very easy. It's not easy to throw.
I have a bit of a different view on this, on a couple of things. One is, I don't believe that, I think the reservation bill is an option. And in some sense, the sort of the male-dominated political parties are giving us no choice but to push for it. But there are equally good options, at least, that are followed by many other democracies. South Africa, Australia, many countries have political parties that have either self-regulated, or there is a legislation that says thou shall give at least 33% tickets to women. And in some countries, 50% tickets to women. Which
South Africa, Tara, it is in the constitution of South Africa. So
correct, that's what I'm saying. If there's either a
given in the constitution itself, reservation given to women in South Africa post-independence is in their constitution, just like in Nepal. So that's
the ones with the reservation. But I'm saying there are also countries with legislation on their political parties as far as the candidates they field that says you must field at least 33% to 50% women candidates, so that the party which is sown by, and in India, parties swear by the constitution in order to get a registration. And as you know, the preamble talks of political equality. If you've sown by that, then you must be held to account on that front. But unfortunately, the Election Commission doesn't have the teeth to, for example, cancel their license if they go on fielding 92% male candidates, as they do time after time after time. That is one. The other is, as far as women not objecting to egregious things, I think all parliamentarians, all legislators, anybody with a conscience, even citizens, must be objecting to it. That said, I think every woman who is a representative carries literally a cross on behalf of the gender, whereas a Surendra Singh or anybody else, Sakshi Maharaj, can make egregious statements and it doesn't reflect on mankind. Everyday male politicians don't just keep quiet on these things. They actually make overtly misogynistic statements saying women ask for rape, and it doesn't reflect on the competence of mankind. We don't go around holding debates asking ourselves, should we vote men at all? They're doing these things. Isn't it? We don't ask any of these questions. Versus, if there is one woman who doesn't make that statement, or two or three women, they carry the cross for the whole of womankind. And then we question, is it worth voting women because, they don't do X or they don't do Y? I don't think these women need to carry the cross for womankind. They're doing the wrong thing, but that doesn't reflect on the entire, womankind as far as women's representation goes. We have a right to be there, right to be incompetent, and a right to be competent. Incompetence is not gender specific.
Yes, absolutely. Really well said. And here, there's someone who pointed out, Shri A said, women leaders doing better in COVID is a myth. Data is weak to point this out in theory. No, two new research says data is weak. Kindly check the facts. So I was just checking that data, and I'll take this also to Ranjana Das. But I was looking at some data that is coming. Scroll has done an excellent article comparing women-led countries with men-led countries of the same size and GDP. So that because there are fewer, obviously, women-led countries, and also more progressive countries tend to vote women in. And it quite conclusively shows that women-led countries have done better. Now, again, Ranjana Das, do you agree that women-led countries have fared better?
Well, I would want to respond it from a different angle. I mean, it's like though the countries which have fared better certainly does have better healthcare and better public services system. And of course, it's a women leadership that has done to drive those system in favor of people who had been impacted by the pandemic. So that's one of my take on this. And the other thing is, I mean, let's also not try to burden women with women's issues. One, certainly that representation is the need of the hour. We need more and more women, not only in parliament and assembly, but also in all the structures of governance system. That's going to be the game changer, because we need more women in all nodes of governance, where they come into policy making, where they are able to decide not only on their behalf but on the entire welfare of the society. So that's another submission from my end on this. So whether women-led countries have done better, it also has to be analyzed that how the public services or how the nature of healthcare, education, those things are also shaped up in those countries. And of course, the feminist leadership does make a lot of difference in terms of analyzing those services. Yeah.
So I want to ask one last question. Okay, so here's the thing. We know that when handing out tickets, political parties look at vote banks. They look at caste-specific vote banks very carefully, because they realize that people of a certain caste will vote for someone within their caste. Yadavs will vote for Yadavs, and so on and so forth. And this happens across the country. There are profession-led vote banks. So farmer leaders will get votes from farmers and things like that. Why is it that women don't function as a vote bank in India? So if you have a woman candidate, it's not a given that women will vote for the women candidate. It doesn't function as a vote bank. Why is that? Has anyone examined that matter, and do we know why? Anyone on the panel?
Yeah.
You know, officially, women belong to no caste actually, because yes, because you get the caste of your man. The family you married in becomes your caste. In fact, that's what we say. That's why there can be greater solidarity between women, because they don't belong to any caste. Wherever they go, they have to accept whatever caste that they get married. And normally, of course, marriages are within the caste. But Bihar is very unique when it comes to caste politics. And that is what is, and caste is a tool of patriarchy. Don't forget about that. Caste is a tool of patriarchy, and that is why all caste politics supports patriarchal norms and values. And that is why women don't fare very well in that setup. That is why in Bihar politics, when it comes to caste, women are not really being able to get that solidarity around them and are able to win that vote. But then when they come from political family, they have that advantage. And that is why most women from political families are contesting, because if a Yadav woman from a political family where people have been MPs or other MLAs, or in lieu of husband, she got the ticket, she will definitely get the caste support. But if you don't have that already with you, then you are not going to anything. That's then 50-50 chance. But still, in spite of all that, women are winning more. It's a question of giving them representation more than putting them through the election.
So I have a little bit of a different take on it, Faye, which is that actually there is a women's vote bank. Okay. For instance, Nitish Kumar, for example, Nitish Kumar, if you look at the CSDS Lokniti post-poll analysis, for many years, Nitish Kumar's percentage of women's vote is pretty high, and he has won because of that women's vote. Ditto for the 2006 election analysis for Tamil Nadu with Jayalalitha. Ditto for Naveen Patnaik's at least 2 of the terms. And in all these cases, women tend to form a vote bank not necessarily to elect other women. Women form a vote bank when issues that they care about are addressed. For example, the prohibition in the case of Nitish Kumar, for example, that is for the first term. Second term is when he passed the 50% reservation before this. In the first term, he passed the 50% reservation. Therefore, the second term got affected. Then he did the police and the government jobs of 35%. Now, similarly, Naveen Patnaik, with all the women self-help groups, there is a whole slew of, he also did a 50% in Odisha. So whole slew, every time, Jayalalitha is very well known for her consistent pro-women policies. It's not a one-off thing. It's a consistency that women's vote bank expect. Except that we somehow believe that women's vote bank should end up electing other women, which it doesn't do. What it does do is look for who are the governments that make pro-women policies consistently, and after executing the policies is when they get the vote. Women don't vote based on manifestos. The way the caste or the farmer or the other vote banks work, women are not mobilized based on manifestos. Women end up voting based on delivered goods. And there are multiple instances in India where people have won, leaders have won based on the women's vote, the delta of the women's vote.
We're going to leave it there. Yes, go ahead, please.
In fact, in Bihar, if you see, women have voted to the Sat Nishchay that Nitish Kumar had up, and what mattered more was the gas chulha, the water, the Har Ghar Nal Jal, all those things actually have mattered to them, and then they have put it more in that Bihar. Yeah, so they do consider what actually benefits them, and let's not think that they mindlessly.
I just want to answer one question that's popped up in the chat window, the question of Jayalalitha. And I do know, and we should acknowledge that there was a great deal of corruption and there were problems with her government. But specifically to do with crime against women and the empowerment of young girls in the state, I think Tara would be in a good position to answer that question. What was Jayalalitha's track record in the state of Tamil Nadu with empowerment of young girls going to high school and crime against women?
So starting from her cradle baby scheme, which is revolutionary, right? It dramatically brought down female feticide. She simply established cradles at every primary healthcare center in every district so that women who want, families that wanted to, instead of killing the female fetus, they could drop it off and those children were available for adoption. That dramatically changed the female feticide ratio in Tamil Nadu. After that, from free laptops to cycles. Cycles was, now everybody is talking about cycles to girl children, but she was the first one to introduce that way back in the 90s, where all the girls going to middle school and above got cycles. And then, of course, there were things like laptops, lactation and breastfeeding centers everywhere. She provided health specifically to women's health insurance. Even today, even if you work for a big corporate like I do, when you go for a master health checkup at a hospital, at a fancy hospital, they will offer you a standard issue master health checkup, which is 99% the same as what men get, except for a pap smear.
Yes.
Okay, but the fact is we have many, many organs and our health profile is quite different than that of men. And after this many years, I'm sorry, the people at the hospital don't have the basic smartness to devise a women's master healthcare that is significantly different than men's. They don't. And she introduced a women's health insurance, which is well-rounded. Health check and health insurance free at public hospitals, which is well-rounded. So she's done a series of stuff from everything from reproductive health. MMR is one of the lowest in the country's MMR. The MMR levels, the fertility levels are comparable to Western European countries. So she did a well-rounded thing, and because she was a multi-term chief minister, she was able to kind of take forward those policies. And also, I must say that the opposition had the sense to preserve those policies and not roll them back. Therefore, there was a compounded effect, and she got the women's vote again and again and again.
Yes, and I hope that answers the question of that little battle that's happening in our chat window about whether or not Jayalalitha made a difference. I think that the very important thing that Tara said in this conversation that we should take with us is that competency should be associated with the human being, not the gender. And I want to give you an example of the fact that it's always said that women are bad drivers, right? I'm an excellent driver and better than most men I know. It has nothing to do with my gender. You will have bad drivers and good drivers who are both men and women, and gender plays zero part in it. So what we're looking for is representation where women are in the room where decisions are being made. And the lockdown is a classic example where it was decided for various reasons that the lockdown should happen. But they were issues that pertain to women specifically, and nobody thought of them because women were not in the room. That's what we're asking for, representation of voice and of issues. Competence should actually just be linked to the individual and not to the gender. As voters, we can do a few things. Read about it. This is always my recommendation. Read about it, read about it, read about it. Read about examples overseas, examples in India, success stories, failure stories. All I ask is that we spark thought, we spark doubt, we spark questions. So you start asking more questions and looking for answers. That's where my job ends. After that, when you look for the answers and you get them or you don't get them, it will make you a better voter. You decide what is good for your state, city, country. You are the voter. I want to thank the three ladies for giving us time and answering all questions so patiently. I do hope that we can make a difference to some, to some part, so that we hand over a better balanced country to the next generation than the one that we inherited. That's fundamentally the job as custodians of this country. Good luck to all of us for that very uphill battle. But thank you all for watching.
Hope to see more women in the Bihar Vidhan Sabha this time. Yeah?
Yes, hope to see more women in Bihar Vidhan Sabha. Thanks for watching. Good night.
Thank you, Faye.